And where we left off was, the instructors that commonly say question everything except for me. So, they're willing to give criticism, but not willing to take it. And that seems to be pretty commonplace. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, where do you start on that one? I think back in the days of the forums that we talked about earlier on the last one, they became the ultimate insult to give to somebody was that you're being negative, because it was a whole positivity movement and things like that.
Yeah.
And everybody's capable of anything and all that sort of stuff. And the problem with that is, I think it's just not grounded in reality, is it? I think it's all very well being an idealist, but you've got to be a realist to go with it.
Yeah.
So if you ever pointed anything out that was connected, say, the laws of physics, for instance, you could be, shot down as being a negative person, and it became a little bit of the ultimate insult, to be honest. And I thought it was crazy. I wrote pieces about that, and it's like, we need to have a degree of negative thinking, and we all do exhibit that all the time. When you're driving your car, you don't just assume that kid playing with a soccer ball at the side of the road isn't going to run out in front of you. You don't assume that, because you think, oh, well, I'll think positive. He's going to see my car. I won't have to do anything. You kind of think, what happens if? Don't you? There's a degree of negative thinking. There's a degree of contingency plans in life, for instance, that do factor in the worst can happen. Or, so I think being negative is I think it kind of keeps people alive a little bit. I mean, being a pessimist is usually not the cause of death, is it?
No.
If you went round all the morgues in the world and looked at all the toe tags, you'd probably see something along the lines of cause of death, optimism.
I'll just walk into this neighborhood. It doesn't matter. I'm not concerned.
Some kind of optimism, some kind of hold my beer, I'll be okay scenario, isn't it? It's very rarely going to be a pessimist kind of cause of death. So, that, to put it, in the joking terms. So I think, you've got to have that skepticism, I think, of things. And it tends to be, though, doesn't it, that it's okay for other people to criticize things that they find is wrong, but certain types of people, if you point that back at them, they get very bent out of shape by it. So I just never had that that restriction, or that worry about what names I get called. So I think maybe I've got a thicker skin than some of these so-called superheroes. I don't know why that would be. Maybe because in the military or something like that, you do kind of get that drummed into you that you just got to take it. It is what it is. I feel, though, that the essence of all this is critical thinking. We've got to think critically. Now, there's a bit of a kind of a clue in the name there, isn't it? That critical comes from criticism. It's all the same genre of word, or same genus of word, whatever you would call that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's what powers science, for fuck's sake. Is being critical and skeptical and not believing things just because somebody said so. And if there's a better way, striving to test things out and find the best way and find what's true, what isn't true, what works, what doesn't work. It's kind of the basis of fucking science, is to be critical. So why can't we be critical of each other? It's there exists as well that if you do start asking questions that are awkward, and they're only awkward because people don't have the answer. That's the only awkward question, isn't it? If somebody doesn't have the answer, or somebody doesn't want to give the answer because it exposes an inconsistency, maybe a hypocrisy, whatever. Yeah. So the only awkward questions are the ones that you don't want to answer. And why don't you want to answer them? Well, maybe because you don't have the answer, or maybe because the answer doesn't tie in with everything else you've been saying. Who knows? All right. But I think we've got to ask those awkward questions. We've got to ask that guy, why are you stamping on the floor harder than you're hitting the target? Is there a reason for that? And if they can't answer it, if there is a reason, if you do get some reverberation of power or something like that, fine. But if it's just something you haven't thought about, don't get all bent out of shape because you haven't thought about it.
Yeah.
Go think about it. That's
Yeah.
it. Go
Yeah.
think about it and come back with the answer. And we go back to Feynman again, don't we?
Yeah.
Look at the problem, think really hard about the answer, write down the answer, And then the awkward questions then that, the ones I don't want to answer, but they don't mind asking them, you know? You tend to find, I think, with this modern movement of combatives, etc., that it's all about not so much slagging off, but pointing out how the traditional classical systems aren't effective, but this super street combat system is effective because it's based on all this new stuff, this science stuff. Like I say, we got all the scientifical OODA loops, the Higgs laws, all this kind of stuff, the Cooper color codes. We've got all this new stuff that makes our stuff better than the traditional and classical stuff, martial arts. That's a bit of a movement, isn't it? So it's okay for them to criticize traditional and classical martial arts. That's fine. But don't criticize their new version.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't get that. I think everything's open. Everything's on offer. All is allowed. And if you're not willing to answer questions about your stuff, valid ones. I mean,
Yeah.
trolls do exist. Dickheads do exist who serve no purpose than just to cause trouble. They're those, so in extreme circumstances, yeah, of course, there are trolls out there that just want to see the world burn down, But
Yeah.
somebody asking you a legitimate question like, why did the guy leave his arm out after that punch that then gave you the opportunity to do that fancy thing you just did? If the guy pulled his arm back, would you still be able to do that fancy thing that you just did? I think that's a very legitimate question.
Yeah,
But if
for
somebody
sure.
doesn't like it, I think that's a problem. If somebody doesn't like that question because it just exposes that, yeah, maybe I haven't taken into account the retraction, the laws of physics about what's actually going to happen. Is, why did that guy let go of you when you did that? What was the mechanism to release that grip, or did he just let go because the drill has him let him go?
Yeah.
I think those are valid criticisms, but
Yeah.
it seems that if you ask that, you'll get branded as a negative hater.
Yeah.
There are
And
usually
yeah,
all kinds of. Go on.
yeah, the sad thing is too, like it's a form of feedback, and feedback equals growth quite often. I would much rather have a coach that picked me to pieces than a coach that just sat back telling me that I'm doing everything great. It's the only way you grow. It's the only way you improve.
Yeah, it's just like without that feedback. I mean, what I would say is though that there tends to be, in what I've experienced, criticism is very conditional. You're only allowed to criticize if you've trained intimately with that person and you know exactly what they're doing, etc., etc., etc. So you've got to have complete intimate knowledge of everything they do. And if you criticize someone's video, and this makes me laugh the most, you've got to have a video yourself. That so unless you can't criticize somebody crashing a car unless you've also got a car, even
Yeah.
though it's blatantly obvious you just crashed a car. But you're not
Yeah.
allowed to
Yeah.
say that unless you've got a car. And like, where's the video of you driving that car? It's like, I think that's a bit
It's
silly.
ridiculous. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, to a point, like I said, there are trolls out there that will just burn everything down,
Yeah.
because it's what they do. Nothing's good enough, Just read YouTube comments, and then you'll lose faith in humanity a little bit, don't you?
100%.
Come on, you know,
Yeah.
just read Amazon reviews about something. You know what I mean? There's always somebody there saying it broke as soon as I opened the box. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, of course it did. But I do think that we've got to be able to criticize stuff.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, I find, is yeah, criticism is very conditional. You've got to meet all these criteria before you're allowed to criticize that person. But it doesn't matter who you are, what you've done, and what your knowledge is, or what your experience is. If you want to give that guy a compliment, that's
That's
always
okay.
accepted.
Yeah.
Always
Yeah.
accepted. I think that says something, to be
Yeah.
quite honest. One thing I'd like to point out, though, is it's usually when you criticize somebody's hero, right? And they might be their own
Oh,
hero.
yes.
They might be their own hero though, you know. So I think there's a big element of, you see a lot of people with all the markers for narcissism out there, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
They're never wrong. Everybody else's problem, blah, blah, blah. They're much better than they think they are. You know, all right, I'm no psychologist, but, you know, you come across that, you know, the Dunning-Kruger is
Mm.
alive and well in a lot of people, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
And
one
they
thing
just
I,
sit there watching. They sit there watching everything you do under a microscope and just wait for one little thing they can pounce on. One
but I
little
think
thing.
if you criticize someone's hero, you know, that's not allowed. But I bet when they go train with that hero, what do they say to him or her when he corrects one of their techniques, for instance?
Mm.
So, you know, you're not throwing a hammer fist very well. Is he allowed to tell you that?
Yeah.
Or does that kind of fall into, because that's just criticism, that's just
Yep.
critique, that's just feedback. As an
Yep.
instructor, you coach people all the time in any sport, in
Mm.
any teacher. Every teacher in the world has got a red pen for marking, you know.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, it just becomes ridiculous that it's become such a bad thing because it's become very subjective and you're hurting people's feelings. That's what it really is.
Yeah.
And, you know, people take feelings, you know, far too seriously and they hold them above and beyond facts,
Yeah.
you
That's it.
know.
These guys, like you're saying, these guys have bodies built for war, but mess with their feelings and it's over.
I know, right? Shouldn't this stuff make you tougher? You know, I
You'd
always
think so.
say, I mean, you know, on some of the seminars, you know, some of the language can get a bit ripe, you know, and I do that deliberately as well because it's, I want to foster that fairly harsh environment, which just kind of um, puts people in that mindset that we're not doing ballet. This is battle. You know, it's nearly spelt the same, but it's quite not. You know,
Yeah.
it's so, you know, you know the language can get a bit rough. You know, the attitude can be a bit rough as well. There's no touchy feely nicey about stuff. It's, you know, it's a serious game, and obviously there's no abuse, but you know we got to respect the context of what we're doing. And people will say to me like, you know, and I've had it like before, you know, it's like, oh, but it's you do use bad language sometimes, Mick, and I'm like, yeah, I know that, you know. And I say to them, oh, don't worry, it's because you know, it's maybe not a big joke, but I just tell them it's like, sorry about that. It's just because I've got Tourette's or something like that. You know what I mean? And they go, oh, I see, I understand. And I say, all right, off you go, get fucking back to training. You know, it's like, come on, if you're getting upset by bad language in training, if you're getting
Yeah.
upset by somebody saying harsh things to you, what the fuck are you going to do when someone punches you in the face?
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, surely this stuff should be water off a duck's back
Yeah.
to a street combat god. You know,
Yeah.
like we're all trying to be, but we're getting upset by a little bit of honest feedback.
Yeah.
We're getting upset by awkward questions that we haven't got the answer to. I tell
Yeah.
everybody at seminars, look, I need you to ask me questions that I don't know the answer to, because then the seminar gets better the next time I teach it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's what it is. If you can ask me a question that I can't answer, then that's fantastic, because it means I'm going to go and learn something now. I've got to go figure that out for the next guy that asks me that. So hopefully every seminar gets better.
Yeah. It's a
If you just
catalyst.
tell me that,
Yeah.
if you just tell me it was amazing all the time, it's fine. It's great for my ego, maybe, you know, but nothing grows from that.
No.
You know, it becomes very inbred then, doesn't it? Nothing gets better. You've got to pick holes in things. We have things on operations. You have what would be called an after action report, or a post mortem is the better word, I think, personally. So I will say to people after a job, say some kind of security job, um, that when we finish, we all sit down and we look at what we did that day or on that particular job, and we've got to be critical about it, because guaranteed not everything went well.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. We're human after all, you know. We're dealing with a complex environment, you know, life. So things don't go right. So what went wrong on that job? And the rules are, you can be as critical as you want about anybody, me included. If I'm the team leader, commander, whatever it is, you can be as critical as you want. However, you've got to start with yourself. What did you do
Yeah.
wrong? that day. You know what I mean? So it fosters an amazing attitude on that team that we get better straight
Wow.
away. You know, I'll
That,
say, Jeff, when we pulled up, you were a bit slow getting out of the door of the car. So it left a bit of an opening in the formation or whatever I'll say. You'll be like, yep, got that. You know what I mean? But before I said that, I will also say that I stood in the wrong place. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I've
yeah,
got to
yeah,
come up with something about myself first. And then what we'll probably do from there is, while we're still fresh from that job, if it's fixable by just a couple of rehearsals, just to kind of nail it down, we'll do it before we pack up and go. We haven't
yeah,
finished until we fixed it. So it's a little bit like, and I bring that up into the training as well that I do. It's like when you're driving along and you see a little red light come up on your dashboard of your car, you know, one of the expensive lights,
yeah,
that you don't just put your car away overnight and hope it's gone out in the morning, do you? You've got
no,
to go and address that thing
yeah,
that came, the light that came on. You don't just put the horse away without cleaning it off. You know, it's that kind of thing. You got to fix it, you
yeah,
know. So I do that in the training as well. When we look at, we'll develop skills, we'll combine the skills into drills, we'll then test the drills out, but then we'll repair what went wrong. And I think that's a very crucial element that people don't do in the training.
yeah,
They'll do some, you know, some pad work, some takedowns, whatever. They'll then combine it into a bit of a drill. Then they'll put the drill under some pressure. They'll put their helmets on or whatever they do. And then afterwards, it's big high fives and group hugs from group photographs, isn't it? Wow,
yeah,
look how amazing we were. Whereas really what you need is get the video out, look at the video and go, yeah, we need to work on that bit. We need to work on this. We need to work on this. And then before you put the gear away and go home, you just spend 5 minutes working on the thing that let you down the most.
yeah,
And I think that's a very crucial part of training. And I think that, you know, it works very well in the courses I teach.
yeah,
That the last 15 minutes of the day, you've got to be very honest and say, right, this sucks. I'm really bad at this. This let me down today. Blah,
yeah,
blah, blah. And you grab somebody and you say, do me a favor, can you hold the pad there for me? Or do me a favor, can you grab me like this or whatever?
yeah,
And you just fix the thing that went wrong. So don't just work on the stuff that's really good, work on the stuff that's really bad, you
yeah.
know?
That's a
But
good
you've got to be
philosophy.
honest.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
good
you've got to be
philosophy
honest
for
though.
life. That'd come in
Yeah,
handy. Like I know, you know, in the workplace, how many times a finger gets pointed at someone and they something goes wrong, and everyone blames each other without, you know, looking at themselves. Basketball last season, you know, we had games where they were horrible, and everyone's blaming each other, and I'd be like, all right, shut up. What could you have done better? You know, and that philosophy, like particularly now with young people, they lack that ability to be able to look at themselves and go, this is what I need to do. Like I've
yeah,
seen it across the board, you know, working,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and
I think
it's just a good general philosophy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a movement now, isn't there? It's that lack of accountability that a lot of people
Oh,
have.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
becoming kind of a thing with modern generations. You know, I think if, there's always been those kind, but I think it's being realized a lot more now. I don't know. I don't know about that. I'm not a say a behavioral psychologist, so I don't
Yeah.
pretend to be one. But
Yeah.
I do notice it in the training that and on operations that the best teams are the ones that are the most critical. You
Yeah.
know, the best teams I've ever been on. And the more specialized a team as well, the more you seem to get that level of honesty and accountability, right? The moment you've got a guy that won't admit ever being wrong or whatever, or blames everybody else, that's a guy who's probably, you know, nobody wants to work with that guy anymore. You
Yeah.
know, you want the guy that's honest, that
Yeah.
says, yeah, I fucked up here. You know what I mean? And he's the first to own that, and then that guy will point the finger at you. But Jeff, you fucked up as well, didn't you? And he expects you to say, "Yep, absolutely."
Yeah.
The moment you start getting into arguments about who fucked up who fucked up the least,
The team's
the
gone.
argument wants to be who fucked up the most. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because you know that's the best teams I've ever been on are the guys who are the most critical.
Yeah.
You know, and I think you'll find that in high level sports as well. The best coaches are the ones that are the most critical of because they set the standards higher. That's all it really is, isn't it? You've got higher
Yeah. Yeah.
standards.
Yeah.
You know, the bar is raised, and I think we need more of that. We definitely do. Critical
Oh,
thinking is the key to all this stuff. You
yeah.
know, otherwise we'll just keep doing what we've always done, and there's no progress.
exactly.
You know
Yeah,
what I mean? At some point, somebody got very critical about riding to work on a horse, didn't they? And they thought, is there a better way? You know,
yeah.
at some
Well, it's
point,
funny. Yeah, this is the
yeah.
only industry where that's the case. Like if you go to a
Oh,
doctor and he stuffs up or whatever, everyone hears about it. No one goes to him.
well,
You
that's
know.
a funny thing, isn't it? It's like, I mean, you can't say that there isn't any ego or corruption in science because it's rife.
Hmm.
But I think at its core, it's a lot more objective than a lot of other industries, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And if you think like, okay, Albert Einstein, probably quite a smart guy, you know, they reckon he's one of the smartest guys in history, kind of thing. But there are guys today still trying to disprove his theories.
hmm.
You know, their whole career is based on disproving his theory.
Yeah,
And Einstein would probably welcome that.
yeah,
He wouldn't complain about that. He'd probably welcome that. You know,
yeah,
and that's the basis of you know the real science, isn't it? Not the
yeah,
ego-based stuff. You know, the stuff that's backed by a lot of money, because there's always going to be corruption wherever there's money, isn't there? But
yeah,
real
yeah,
science is all about critical feedback. You
yeah,
know, and I think if it's good enough for Einstein, it's good enough for us. You know, there's a man
yeah,
who could sit back on his laurels, but probably wouldn't. So why are we? You know, why
yeah.
don't we accept that? Yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah, I did the same with the gym right from the day one when people would come in. And I said, if someone walks in here and shows us a better way, then we're not going to turn a blind eye to it.
Of
We're
course
going
not.
to adopt it. And if someone
Of
comes
course
in and
not.
is so full of ideas and whatever and does it better than me, I'll step aside and let them take over. I'll happily do that. That's the only
I
way
think,
we collectively get better.
yeah, I think that's why I still look at the sports model as being the model I kind of copy, because it's based on performance,
Yeah.
pure and simple, and it's you know it's probably the most scientific you could get because they do experiments.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Constant experiments, you know, under live conditions. So you know it's probably the best manifestation of science
Yeah.
in our particular field. You know, and I think you can't beat that because it's
Yeah.
purely results based, and
Yep.
they test it out. You
Yeah.
know,
And I feel that's where we differ compared to others in this industry. Is like the training we do is pretty intense. Not for
Hmm.
everyone, but we do scrutinize it and test it to that level of ability. And we find out like it's not a case of trust my word. We like the evolution of how our training center has come over the years is through
Hmm.
testing, just testing,
Hmm.
testing, testing under close to real circumstances. We up the ante, we do it,
Oh yeah,
we hit each other hard. And it's evolved so much from that. Like that's where I think we have the jump on others who, going back to knife defense, like not too many people throughout the world do it justice or train it in the manner that's fitting.
yeah, yeah. I think one of the main things, and I've always try to hold this in my head, is whenever I'm designing a drill, I'm designing a drill to test a thing,
Yeah,
not to validate a thing.
yeah, yeah,
You know, and I think straight away, like you said there. I mean, I've seen the knife training you do, and it mirrors almost exactly what I'm doing with the force on force part of it.
yeah,
Is the guys are actually trying to stab each other,
yeah.
and
There's a reward for
you don't see that anywhere else.
no.
Really. There's some very good systems out there, but I think where they fall down is I think I don't know the testing isn't as robust as it could be.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
they
totally
might
agree.
say they have malevolent intent and things like that, but do they
Not really.
really?
Not
Do
really.
they really? And
No.
I'm thinking, you know, you got to have that. You
Yeah.
got to, as
If
far as
you
safety can allow. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if you're doing a training course where I know people here have, jumped on the courses that people run and they leave it, not a single bruise on them. And I'm thinking, well, you didn't really test it, did you? If you're coming away unscathed, you're not tired, you're not sitting in the corner almost in tears because you've done so
Yeah.
poorly, then you haven't tested it.
I mean, I'm not so much into people that have to have a bruise to prove that it worked, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's got to break. It's got to
Yeah.
break. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like going to the gym and never lifting a weight that you can't lift.
Yeah.
How do you know how strong you are?
Yeah.
That's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, there's that old saying, isn't there, that if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you always got.
Yeah.
You know, and unless you're willing to push the envelope. I mean, what's training based on? And learning, it's based on overload.
Yeah.
Without overload, why would the system, your body or your brain even, change?
Yeah.
You know, if you understand every word in that book you've just read, then you're not going to get smarter from it.
No.
You know, so and if you know if you can lift every weight that you try and lift, you're not going to get stronger from it. You know, to put
Yeah.
it into very basic kind of terms.
Yeah.
But you've got to have that overload, and overload basically means that there's something the system can't handle. Otherwise, it'd be called underload, wouldn't it? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and if you're not overloading the system with real pressure, I see people calling stuff pressure testing, and I'm thinking, right,
Yeah.
if that was real pressure, you would not end up in that situation, in that particular position, because it wouldn't happen.
No.
You know, like a standing arm bar with a man holding a knife, and you've got
Yeah.
him in that classic arm lock, and it's like, when?
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
is that? You know, come on. You
Yeah.
know, if you're in that position, then something went very wrong, and there's no pressure.
Yeah.
It can't be, because you wouldn't end up like that.
Yeah.
You wouldn't. It'd be
And that's the
like a
other one.
sprinter.
Yeah.
It'd be like if you took a photograph of a sprinter drinking a cup of tea. It's like, how fast is he running? That's what I want
Yeah.
to know. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because
Yeah.
if he can do that, he ain't sprinting.
Yeah.
So if you can end up in this particular position in that so-called knife defense pressure testing, I'm like, what was that pressure? Because it's not the pressure I use, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So
And it's funny you mention,
overload.
overload. And another training, I guess, principle of training, talking about weights is specificity too. I think it fits in there as well. It
Mm,
has to be specific. It has to replicate what you're trying to
yeah,
achieve. And like you're saying, just watch the prison videos of people getting stabbed. That's what it needs to look like. It doesn't
yeah,
need to look
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
FMA or
I
something.
100%
Yeah.
agree with that. It's you've got to look at that thing, or if you're talking unarmed as well, it's like most people have seen a fight
Yeah.
in some description. They've seen somebody go for it in a bar, in a parking lot outside. They've seen, at the very least, CCTV. They've seen the ferocity of people going for it. Not idiots dancing around, doing a bit of a sparring match in the street, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But they've seen guys who've properly gone for it. If what you're doing doesn't resemble that somehow, then you know people might say, yeah, but those are untrained people. They
Yeah.
might be
No.
untrained, but they're very experienced at fighting, a lot of them,
Yeah.
But I think then people still give away that what they want the fight to look like.
Yeah.
And people still cling to that, what I want it to be like.
Yeah.
And that still fosters in some sort of martial arts kind of cool.
Yeah.
They want the fight to
Mysticism.
look cool. And
Yeah.
the
It's
more
funny.
you realize it
I
just
had the
isn't.
same discussion in jail, working in jail. I'm not in there with one of the guys that works in there as
Yeah, you want
well.
to clarify that, mate. You want to clarify
Yeah.
that,
Yeah. I need
it's
to clarify that. Um, where he was saying like he does Thai or whatever, and he was like arguing with one of the inmates, saying, oh, you fight, and he goes, if you fight me like the way you fought that guy, you'll be gassed in 20 seconds. And he goes, I'll just block, defend, and then I'll start to pick you up. I'm trained to fight 5 5-minute rounds, and I'm thinking, no, you won't. If you can't handle that 20-second onslaught, if you can't
yeah,
function in that, it's over. I think,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
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 that was the kind of the genesis of the live drills that I have, the force on force that I use on the foundation courses. It's very brief. It's
yeah,
5 seconds, 6 seconds, 7 seconds max, really. And it's to really instill that sense of urgency of trying to beat the other guy before he even knows he's in a fight, you
yeah.
know?
And it's
So
good.
it ain't about taking the
Yeah,
guy out in the third round. It's about getting the guy in the changing rooms while he's putting his shoes and socks on. It's that
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of mentality.
yeah,
And a lot of people look at that drill and think, oh, but I would do this and I would do, until they've done the drill, and then they realize that, yeah, you just don't. You just can't. It's a great leveler, that time
yeah.
deficit.
And the beauty of it, I found, is because when I did it, same thing. I had all these ideas in my head. This is what I can do. But as I'm doing the push-ups, all I'm thinking about is my fucking chest. I am so tired right now. And I'm thinking, is he going to say go? Push up, push up, push up. And then I was distracted. So I no longer thought about the game plan that I
That's
probably
it.
scripted. and all I thought about was how much I was hurting, doing the
But
push-ups,
yeah,
and
you
that's
mentioned
it.
you mentioned specificity earlier, and I nearly said
Yeah,
that word properly. But people often ask me, and well, so what's with the push-ups and why you're on the floor? That's not realistic, and it's like it's not meant to be. It's meant to be, just symbolic of a bad situation. So
yeah,
for people that don't know, the drill, it's a force on force drill. It's the sparring part of the stuff we do, and in the very basic iteration of it, people start face down on the floor, facing away from heads opposite to each other. And on a silent signal from me, they've each got a safety guy assigned to them. He or she will pin them to the ground, kind of, and that's the trigger. So they've got to fight to their feet, turn and engage the other guy, you know, and they can engage all out, all targets allowed, blah, blah, blah. But they only get about 5 seconds before I'll blow a whistle. But it's not for them to stop. That's for the two safety guys to physically grab them and drag them apart and put them back on the floor and get ready to go again. Now, the reason for the starting on the floor thing is it's just, well, it's the worst position you can be in. So I want to start it in a position where you're not pre-positioned great for you in an advantageous position.
mhm,
You're in a crap position. And being on the floor face down is probably the worst you could imagine. So why not work from the worst position there is as a
mhm,
symbolic thing, If you can handle that, well, you can maybe handle being stood up, not looking the right way or something.
yeah, yeah,
The physical trigger, better than using a go or a begin or a bell or a whistle or whatever, because it probably is going to be initiated in some sort of physical sense, you know.
yeah,
And when I get guys to do push-ups to start with, it's not because there's something special about a push-up. It does add an element of fatigue, but what it really does is it adds an element of occupying the brain with another task.
yeah, yeah,
That's all that is. And
yeah,
it's only a very basic iteration. We do other ones where we'll start off in a car, or we'll start off getting pushed into a sofa or something like that,
mhm,
or give some sort of a task to do, and then the drill will be thrust upon you while you're in the middle of a task.
yeah,
But it's just a very basic symbolic start to a fight. And when
yeah,
people start talking about, well, it's not realistic though, it's like, well, you're starting with a guy saying go. That's not realistic.
yeah.
You
Touching
know,
gloves
you're
and then go.
yeah, you're
Yeah,
you're punching you're punching a bag, a leather bag full of rags. That's not realistic.
yeah,
Training isn't realistic, if you know what I mean. And all training is rehearsal, but it doesn't all have to be a dress rehearsal, does it?
no,
Sometimes, you're learning your lines.
yeah,
You'll pick out you work at one scene at a time. You don't work at the whole movie in every single take, do you?
yeah,
So it's just a component, an element of the fight. But talk about specific, being specific. There's an element to being specific, but then you can get carried away with trying to be specific. You can get carried
yeah,
away trying to be too specific, and it
yeah.
becomes an amateur dramatics, thing where okay, we need three guys. One has to be 5'8". We need a guy with a red hat on, and it's
Red
like,
Dwarf, yeah.
but do we? Do we?
No,
We need to train in the snow. We need to train in the mud. We need to train. It's like, well, do we though, or can we just train on a big gymnastics crash mat that gives us a soft footing underneath?
yeah,
You can get lost in being trying to be too specific, and you
yeah,
you miss what the actual boxes that you're trying to tick are. You
yeah,
know, that's it. I don't want to make things into some sort of, let's say, amateur dramatic role playing scenario every single time. When we're trying to tick a box, can you react from being caught in a bad situation, in a bad position? Fine. You know, face down will do.
yeah,
Sitting down will do. We don't need the whole preamble of, right, this is the scenario every single time. You know,
yeah,
I like training that's fast, that we can hit it, we can stop it, we can reset it, we can go again.
yeah,
So the drills I design are usually quite small, they're quite easy to reset, which means we can do lots of reps of them. You
yeah,
know, reps build skill,
yeah,
period. That's it. Nobody learns to shoot with one bullet. So that one massive scenario that you do, great. But unless you do it at least another two times, you're not going to get any patterns from it. You're not going to
yeah,
learn. You know,
yeah,
you might have done really well in a fluke. I see you when you did your championship, the knife thing. What was it called? What do you call it? The
There's
shank
Shank Tank. Yeah,
tank.
yeah,
Guys go through 5 times, don't they?
yeah,
Because if they did it once, they might have got lucky. The guy
yeah,
with a knife might have dropped it. He might have fell
yeah,
over or something like that.
yeah,
But 5 times, you start to see, did the guy
yeah,
actually do well consistently, or was it a fluke?
yeah,
And training has to be like that. Training has to be reps,
yeah,
not just one go. You know,
yeah.
that's testing maybe, but it's not training. You
Yeah.
know,
And it's funny too, like you were saying, like people are going, well, asking all these questions like, well, why would I be in a room where there's no doors and no exits? It's almost like I always liken scenario training for porno. Not that I watch them, but people want all the dialogue, they want all that stuff, they want to know all the grounds, no, they want to skip to the action, straight to
Mm.
the action. Like you don't need to set the context and the precedence of everything you do, like you're saying. It's just sometimes this is it. This little thing, that's all we're testing.
Yeah.
Do you
It's a
really need a
component.
backstory on everything?
It's one component out of the engine, isn't it? That's the thing.
Yeah, yeah.
You know. So I'm very big on designing drills that are easy to reset and go
Mm,
again. You know,
yeah,
rather than just some huge big scenario where we have role players and all that sort of stuff. It's good for some stuff, but I think for training value, it's minimal. You
yeah,
know, smaller drills, more components. You know, and you can reset, you can go again. You're going to build patterns of that worked, do more of that. This didn't work, find something else that does. You're
yeah,
gonna build those patterns. You're
yeah,
not going to get that from one go or two
yeah,
goes. You're going to get that from 3, 4, 10, 20 goes. You know.
yeah,
Um, yeah.
yeah. And yeah, talking about trolls and things like that, the logical fallacies.
Oh yeah.
What are the ones that sort of pop out to you the most? When people are arguing with you, I commonly see things like straw man, where people pick something else and create
Yeah.
something else to pick at rather than the actual topic at
Yeah.
hand, and things like that. What are the common ones that you see?
I think the thing to look at with a logical fallacy, the clue's in the name, isn't it? It's the absence of logic.
Yeah,
It's replacing logic with something else, and that's probably because you don't have the logical answer, or you haven't thought of a logical answer. So um, appeal to authority is a big one, I think.
yeah,
That something must be good because other people have said it's good.
yeah,
That doesn't mean, that you know me saying that somebody's good at playing the piano doesn't mean the guy's good at playing the piano.
yeah,
Because what do I know about playing the piano?
yeah,
So that appeal to authority, and again, all this stuff is when you don't have logic as an argument, so you invent something else.
yeah,
That's the thing to think about with the logical fallacy. If you had logic, you wouldn't need to say, well, this is good because he says so. You'd say, this is good because, and then explain why it's good.
yeah. The rationale. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. But if you don't have the logic, it's because, or I can't answer this question, so I'll create one that I can answer that you never asked.
yeah,
The straw man. That's a
yeah,
good one, isn't it? You know?
yeah, yeah,
Or I can't answer this awkward question, so I'm going to criticize your hairstyle.
yeah,
The ad
yeah,
hominem attack.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I mean, I tell people a lot. And I'll say it in the training thing, or even in the world of specialized security that I'm in, unfortunately, that you probably won't like what I'm going to say. You definitely won't like how I'm going to say it, but tell me I'm wrong.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, that sort of thing. Like feelings, great. You know, if I have to lie though to not hurt your feelings, sorry, but I'm going to hurt your feelings.
yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
willing to lie. Just unless in certain circumstances, of course, being brutally honest is not always the way in life, is it? You
No,
know, but when we're talking about professionals things and being professional, and we're talking about or being objective and things, then yeah, lying's got no part to that, and we
yeah,
should be brutally honest with stuff. Outside of that, yeah, I'm not an idiot. The world is built on white lies to keep people happy
yeah,
when it's not important. When it's not important,
yeah.
Logical fallacies, yeah. So appeal to authority.
I think bandwagon's a big one.
Bandwagon's a huge one, isn't it? Everybody
particularly
else is
when,
doing it.
yeah. So
Yeah.
then it must
The
be
thing is, the
right.
bandwagon thing is, as a human, we all like support, don't we? We all like to be amongst people that are like-minded. That's why most people's friendships are based on people who think like them.
Yeah,
We gravitate towards people that follow our way of thinking. It's natural. But again, we've got to be objective about stuff, so it doesn't really matter. It shouldn't really matter in this business. So yeah, the bandwagon can be a problem,
yeah,
and
big
that
time.
often falls into the bit of hero worship going on where you want to jump onto a band. It's a bit like the Tour de France, isn't it? You tuck in behind the guy at the front for an easier ride, don't you? You
Yeah, that's it.
slipstream.
Yeah,
You let
yeah,
him take all the pressure. If he's got a big enough name, then he gets it, and then you get a lot of free marketing and free endorsement as a result, as long as you bend the knee. That's the
yeah,
thing. As long as you bend
yeah,
the
yeah,
knee, kiss the ring, then you get a bit in return. It's a bit of an easy opt out, that is, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
So that's a good. Yeah. What else have we
I think
got?
that the genetic one. So basically, genetic fallacy where depending on who it comes from, they're free from scrutiny. There are
Oh,
certain people out there who could do say whatever they want, and it will never come under scrutiny because of their last name.
absolutely, absolutely. I don't buy that at all. I think this industry and a few others would benefit greatly from a huge epidemic or pandemic of reputational amnesia, where you
Yeah,
forget somebody's reputation and you get to look at what they actually do.
yeah,
Not what you've been told to look for, but you actually see them as just another guy, you know,
yeah,
and then everything is based on merit.
yeah,
I think that would do a lot of good for this business.
yeah,
When
yeah,
if we established a proper meritocracy,
yeah,
but you didn't decide what merit was, like
yeah,
some people decide what merit is. It's like no, 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 just an objective standard of merit. You know,
yeah, yeah,
um, yeah, but that's the logical fallacy, isn't it? It's when there isn't logic. So
yeah,
what can I create instead of?
yeah,
If you know what I mean, yeah.
yeah,
I dislike that.
yeah. And that's what most people do. Like YouTube comments, you could just get that list and go, okay, that's this one, that's that one. It's
I mean,
yeah.
look at how powerful anecdote is.
Mm,
I've seen whole seminars that are basically one long anecdote after another.
yeah,
You know, there's no real critical thinking or explanation of anything. There's no real logic presented or reasoning. It's just that this is something I once did in a fight.
yeah.
So let's
I
do
did it
this.
once. Yeah,
Yeah. And again, as well, I sometimes doubt, yeah, did you though? Is that something you wanted to do in a fight one time or you saw it on a movie? I'm a
yeah,
skeptic.
yeah,
I'm a cynic, actually, not a skeptic in that respect, because it's always funny how the anecdote that they come out with exactly answers that query that they couldn't answer with logic.
yeah,
So they throw an anecdote in instead.
yeah.
And there's an
I've
old
had
saying,
that.
isn't there,
Yeah,
that there's an old saying that, what is the plural of anecdote? Well, it's not data, it's
yeah,
anecdotes. So
yeah.
you can tell as many stories as you want, really, but it's still not going to prove anything really works.
No, that's it.
No.
I've
The
had
thing
I've
that
had that
proves things,
discussion. Yeah, I've
yeah,
had the
the thing that,
discussion with someone, and their response was, "I did it once in a road rage incident," and it's like, "Well, yeah, but and we went through why it's not a valid thing to train, whatever. Yeah, but I did it once in traffic, and it worked for me. So what?
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I'm not who's interested in that, really?
yeah,
Really? That'd make a really good movie.
yeah.
Because that's the only way you're going to replicate that, isn't it? If you
That's it.
control the environment and you can make it happen again,
Yeah,
which is what movie fights are.
that's
But
it.
I'm not interested in a movie.
No,
I'm not interested in making a speech. I'm interested in having a conversation.
yeah,
You know what
yeah,
I mean? Where what you say is based on what they say, and what they say is based on what you say, and on it goes, rather
yeah,
than a prepared statement or a script where you're waiting for your line. I don't want that, which is what
yeah,
a lot of training is, and we talked about that before, didn't we? That
yeah,
a lot of training, if it was put into language, a language model would be learning phrases
yeah,
or learning the script of a movie. Whereas you need that ability to have a free-flowing conversation.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Yeah. Cherry picking is another one. Yeah.
Oh, that's a big one, isn't it? We talked about that though with the OODA loop, didn't we, as well? Is that people will cherry pick a very simplistic element of a very complex theory.
Yeah.
And then somehow tenuously shoehorn it into a combative kind of environment, you know, combative context.
Yeah.
And yeah, cherry picking, that's a big one, I think.
Yeah. I think the fallacy where presuming that a claim has been made, like it was poorly argued, so therefore it's not valid. You know, so someone makes a point, but they don't make the point well. So then it's considered a fallacy because they couldn't argue it well. And you know what? Some people just can't, I guess, you know, argue these things well. Some people don't have that ability to, you know, to be able to do that. So, but yeah, there's so many of them, and yeah, too many. But you know, there's a good list of them. Go through that list, and you can.
Yeah, there's a huge list of them, isn't it? You can go through them. Again, I just go back to it though. The logical fallacies are there when there's no logic.
Yeah.
You know, if you have logic, you don't need the fallacies. So, you know, sometimes again, go back to being honest. That if somebody asks you a question you can't answer, shouldn't you try and figure out the answer rather than dodge the answer and throw something else in there? You know, I think that's the basis of what we're trying to do here. You know, it's to be critical about things and find real answers, not just find real excuses.
Yeah.
Because that's the difference, isn't it? You know, you've got a reason or you've got an excuse.
Yeah.
Now they're both kind of people think they're the same thing, but they're really not. You know, reason is a reason. It's why it happened. An excuse is trying to, I don't know, dodge, you know, the reason, I think. Yeah.
That's it. It should be a catalyst for change, really. Someone can point that out to you and give you that feedback, or there's something that you can't answer. You know, go and find the answer. 100%. Yeah. But we'll leave that one there for today. We've just gone, I think, about 40 odd minutes, close to 50 minutes. So we're trying to narrow it down a little bit. But I think we're a bit closer this time. So again, thanks again. And look forward to the next
time. Let's talk about physical training next time. I know a lot of people are interested in that. Okay.
Yeah, let's do it. Beautiful.
All right.